Welcome to Belly Up to the Blackboard, a podcast focused on the reality of teaching and other musings from and about professionals, hosted by Chris Munn and Justin Russell.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and start this solo. Justin's in the other room grabbing another beverage to start the podcast off. Yeah, it's been a little bit, it's only been a couple weeks since we've last recorded. We do have a new section, like a new bar that we're at right now in my shop, which is nice. Nice, more permanent setup for us. So we're going to be doing some video too, so we'll see how it goes. He's looking for the bottle opener. But today's episode, we're going to kind of talk about I don't want to say sticky issue or like what do you say? It's a very emotional issue, I guess, for some people.
I would say it's emotional.
Emotional, both sides. Justin's back. We're going to be talking about guns in schools, and we don't mean kids really care. We were talking about do you arm your staff after?
Yeah, I would say we are looking more from the safety options side of it.
Yeah, agreed. Not waiting for any outside law enforcement, waiting for them, to take matters into your own hands. And we're going to talk about that today. So, especially after recently at a school, Pella Middle School, that's only about 45 minutes from where we're at, there was not a gun, but a teen was charged with attempted murder and a knife attack at the Pella Middle School. So, it happened, I believe it was, before school, resulted in 2 students being injured at the Pella Middle School. About 7:41 a.m. before the start of classes, the police department responded to a report of a student armed with a knife inside the middle school. According to police, within 2 minutes of being alerted of the situation, officers had secured the school and taken custody of the student. And now I don't know; it was a 14-year-old male student, and I can't remember with Pella how far away the police station is
from the school itself.
From the school, I'm assuming it was probably somebody on their route, that maybe got there, but...
And I don't know if they have an SRO or anything either.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Says the male student attacked the female student and hit her in the neck and back several times with the knife. The male student then tried to attack a second student, but was unsuccessful. The male student then attacked a third student, striking her in the arm with the knife. Police said the 2 students who were attacked sustained minor lacerations and were able to be treated and released at the scene. The male student has now been charged with the following in juvenile court. So, 3 counts of attempt to commit murder, 2 counts of willful injury, 1 count of assault with intent to inflict serious injury, and 1 count of possession of a dangerous weapon by a minor.
Man, yeah.
So 14. Who knows what they'll do? Obviously, we'll try it as an adult, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. And maybe before we start, Chris, maybe it's best that we maybe lay down some ground rules, since it is kind of a contentious.
Okay, let's do it.
So I would say we keep it to probably fact.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I know
Not feelings.
I know you and I have certain leanings on certain issues, and so maybe we keep to that.
So we'll try. There's maybe some things that we'll try to keep it to fact. We do have some facts, and but obviously we're going to give a little bit of opinion too of what I would say what we think. Why not, right?
Yeah, our solutions. But I don't know if I think we steer away from what we think about that person or student.
Oh yeah,
their school district, those
100%,
things.
100%. So,
and then with that said, Chris and I, like I said, we have different leanings, but from a teacher standpoint, maybe we keep it to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Because I think we could go down a rabbit hole if we did it by being parents.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, I was just thinking that too. Yeah, of because then you start getting your emotions into it. And,
right.
What would you do if it was your kid and it was in that building? But so they might have had an SRO, like you said, and that's why it was a 2-minute reaction, which is obviously really good.
That's what you want to hear, right? Yeah. 2 minutes, quick. That's good.
So I know we have an armed SRO in our buildings, and we don't have one per building, but we have one that throughout the district. I know when we were in school, we did have one towards the end of our junior year, senior year.
Yeah, tenure in high school.
Yeah, we that was the first time they had an SRO, and then for a while I think they did away with it. And then now we're back again. We've got one.
Yeah,
So-
and I don't know how we want to structure this, but maybe it is. Let's go over maybe the pros of. I mean, I know we have a script here, but so maybe we follow it. But it talks about case studies and stuff. Maybe we go like we do always. We talk about the pros. We talk about the cons of modern day or current solutions to school violence, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And then maybe we can give a little bit of thoughts on as a teacher and things that we can do to keep us safe and each other safe.
Deal. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, so let's maybe start out with let's start out with cons. Let's do that.
Okay.
It's cons of an SRO.
Okay.
Cons of there is some legislation in the state of Iowa and other states about allowing administrators the ability to assign staff members.
Yep.
To be armed. So maybe let's talk about those two things.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, what would be a con of having an SRO? Well, the first thing that comes to mind, if you have an SRO that does not have the ability or the personality to work well with kids.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge thing because I think one of the biggest things, and it'd be cool if we could have our SRO on here.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know if that would work or not, but if you don't have somebody that can build that relationship with the kids, because other than like if they ever get involved in something where they deal with the police, the only thing the only opinion, I guess you could say, or view they have of them is of what their parents talk to, or like,
Correct.
outside of school. So I think if you are not a person that can build a relationship with children, with kids, young adults, I think that would be a con if you had somebody that was not good and they were in the building.
Correct. I would say maybe not so much a problem nowadays with SROs, but I know 10, 12, 15 years ago, training was a huge issue.
Yeah.
An SRO used to be just plucked out on active duty, right?
Yeah.
And then just said, hey, you're going to do a rotation for a month in a school or 2 months.
Yep.
And then just kind of the idea of child development. I do know, when we talk about de-escalation tactics like MANT or, those types of things, the biggest thing is, like you said, relationships, but then also talking through things, right?
Yeah.
And that's a huge piece of it anymore. So I would say training, that's a con, right? Lack of it.
Yep. And I think you're right. I think, and again, we could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that before, when they first started it was a rotation. There wasn't the train of being an SRO. There wasn't like an SRO officer.
Yep.
Now,
I would say maybe a pre-cruiser to SROs. Wouldn't it be like a dare officer?
Yeah, I would think so.
Pre-cruiser to that.
Yeah, and that was in 5th grade. I believe we had a dare officer at our school but that was more specifically just that I can recall is don't do drugs and how bad drugs are.
Right.
Right. But I don't think it was anything more than that.
But I think when I say pre-cruiser, I would almost imagine that's what police precincts probably went to first, right? Because they're already in the schools.
Yeah, and then I can't, like you said, it kind of grew from there. Maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know if they still have dare officers.
And I don't know. They got rid of that program years ago, but I don't even remember if those guys came in with armed.
I don't. I'm assuming no, because it was
they did
dealing with 5th graders. I don't think maybe.
But they even worked with high schoolers. But I don't even remember them coming in.
Maybe I just remembered them in 5th grade. But
yeah. But anyhow,
yeah.
So that'd be a con. What's another side of that you think?
Another con. I'm trying to think here. If there is, and this is not to a specific SRO, but if you have a rotation of them to where it's not the same person in there all the time. I mean, again, that goes to relationships, but I think if you have an SRO in your building, they need to have, at least a I don't know if it's contract, but like multi-year, because I don't think you can keep switching them out.
No,
because then again, there's that relationship piece of it, and I just don't think it would help very, very much. So
I would say one more con that I can think of, and this will be the last one that I can think of, but it would be if that SRO has a personal connection to the district. So I'm thinking if they have a kid there, a relative, a good family friend, they know somebody. Like, I think there can be a danger in having too much of a connection.
Yeah, I agree, because then you might have some biases that you may not recognize. What do they call those? we hear that all the time. Unconscious
biases.
Unconscious bias.
Well, and I think just the emotional state, right? I could see it if you had a kid in there and you hear that, they're in the bathroom and somebody pressured them to take something.
Yeah.
You'd be right in there, right? You'd be pulling your kid out of class and
You'd be
having that talk with them right away, right?
That's true.
And
it's a good call.
I think it kind of, but it might be a double-edged sword, kind of like if your dad's the principal or your mom's the principal, right?
Yeah. Yep. No, I agree.
Double-edged sword. So, yeah.
So we talked about that. We have obviously. So let's talk about the positives before we get on to anything else. So some of the benefits. Honestly, I think having somebody, if we just want to talk about like for the chance of something to happen, having somebody there that is well trained.
Yeah.
I think ours is part of negotiation teams too. Yep. Maybe. So I think having somebody like that is good to have just as almost like a deterrent.
Yeah.
You're not going to go in there if you know that there's somebody that's armed.
Correct.
So I think that's one thing. I was going to say relationship building, but I did that as like con, so I can't.
I've and again, it'd be nice to have the SRO. Maybe we can do that in a later episode. I think though, I've noticed kids, when that relationship is built, they seem to ask more questions, right, of that SRO.
Yeah.
They have no problem going up and asking like, hey, this might be happening. Or because I know there's been a few times where our SRO has said like, hey, somebody said something to me about this coming up,
Yeah.
So I see that as a positive. It's more of a direct connection to the community, they live in.
When you see them you see your, officer in a different light than if you're getting pulled over, it's kind of like again, that relationship piece, you're building that and you're seeing a softer side, I guess. Yeah. More of a de-stress or less stressed or calmer.
Yeah, because right now, you see the cherries go on and it's, your stress level goes way up.
And their stress level is too, right? So I think it's a good way to understand or learn about, police officers in a different light.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it used to be too. I mean, we're going way back in history, but in the initial days of police officering, you couldn't be a police officer anywhere but the district you lived in or community you lived in, right?
Yeah.
And it was the idea of relationships.
Yep.
You knew right away if Bill down the street was an alcoholic, right?
Yeah.
And you're patrolling with your, baton, and you could be a little more vigilant, right? And that was the idea, that you had a little bit more skin in the game because it was your community.
Yep. Yeah. No, I agree.
And whatever changes. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a plus. The other plus that I can think of right now is, for me as a teacher, I have been able to ask more questions, on a personal level or even on a professional level. Like one thing was I was traveling out of state, and it's what do I need to do to ensure that I don't get arrested, right? Like, because I have a firearm on me,
You got your concealed carry permit.
Right. And every state is different. I mean, it's just so vastly great. But yeah, I think I feel, and then I do feel a little bit better of a connection. Right.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a good resource for questions you might have that could save you down the road. So no, I think that's it. I think those are great, great benefits, are great, positives to having an SRO. And there's quite a few now. Didn't they pass? They passed something recently. I shouldn't say recently. In the last 5 years about SROs, maybe. I think Des Moines took theirs out.
They did, and it wasn't due to funding. There was, and that's the great thing about, and I'm not going to be all like natural, patriotic here and stuff, but the U.S., I mean, that's the great thing, is that there is ongoing discussions, right? Yep. About whether a community that is represented by the school district leaders, of whether they want an SRO or not. And Des Moines is a great instance where the majority of the community in Des Moines said, hey, look, we don't necessarily feel comfortable or want that. And so that kind of was the way that went through, right?
That's true.
But, you think about it, out of the 90 schools, and I'm reading off of KCCI here, and this was back in last summer.
Okay.
But 90 schools, it says that 40 of them say that they didn't want trained teachers allowing firearms on the school grounds. Okay. And so that's teachers, right? That's not SROs. But I would imagine, and like I said, I'm going to make a leap here or assumption, but
let's do it.
But those 40 schools that said no to teachers, I would imagine they might have an SRO.
Could be.
Or just feel strongly about having some type of firearm in the building. You know?
And do you think it was, of those 40 schools, do you think they sent out a teacher survey and then they just took those numbers from that? Or do you think it was strictly the superintendent's opinion?
I would
or school
imagine,
board, I guess.
I would imagine today's climate, and correct me if I'm wrong if you think differently, but I would imagine today's climate, everything is done by survey. Everything.
Yeah. Well, and then you wonder if the surveys actually matter.
Well,
that's a different topic.
Whether the numbers matter, right?
Like, juice the numbers up.
There's always a thumb on the scale somewhere.
Oh yeah.
And but as far as pros go, obviously, if you're a district and your school board says, "Yeah, if we want an SRO or an art teacher," the pros outweigh the cons, right? And
100%.
Whether that is 2-1, 4-3, whatever it is, but I would imagine they got to be great conversations, though.
Oh yeah, I think so, and I wonder how much of it is emotion or fact driven.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because with all of that, that's especially around the topic of guns. Obviously, there's a lot of emotion that goes into it. So
yeah, maybe and maybe in keeping within boundaries, we can talk about lessons learned, though, right? So one thing I've learned, and I'm on our response team for our district, and that's
that fancy bright vest.
Fancy bright vest that I might as well be on the side of the highway picking up garbage.
Where you belong.
What did you just call me, garbage or picking up garbage?
Picking up garbage.
Oh, okay.
Picking up garbage.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. But one of the things that I've come to appreciate is we're not ignorant in learning from mistakes, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people get emotional when certain situations are called out for lack of whatever.
Yep.
But for us in our district, and I think you would appreciate this too, and the same thing with our staff, is that our plan is vetted because we've tried to take the lessons learned, right?
Yeah, and with that plan, we're really involved with our SRO to help build that plan. So I think that helps a lot because you have somebody with a ton of experience that helps you build something that's going to be, your best plan you've got going forward. So
yeah,
and if there's holes in it, they can obviously point them out and you can shore those up. And
the one that interests me, and I'd like your opinion on this, is those districts that have accepted the parent groups.
Okay.
Walk around and guard the school, right?
Yeah, I've seen some where, I don't know if it's technically guarding the school, but there was a high school in not LA, but Louisiana, and there was a dad group that, and it was they led it. It wasn't anything driven by the school. The school obviously approved it, but they were in the morning greeting everybody, and so it was somewhat patrolling, checking the hall, stuff like that. But it was more of like a lot of kids don't have fathers.
Yeah, and it wasn't about showing force though either.
No, it was again that you're building that relationship, that preventative thing before anything. So, if you have that positive relationship, it's going to change how you act. And I think that's what the big thing for them was. And I think that's great if you have a group of, and sexist or not, I think, dads have a bigger impact on that than I think moms do. And no offense to moms, because moms are great.
Yep.
But I think when you're dealing with something like that, where the relationship building piece, right? Yeah. Usually if there's something missing in a relationship with a kid, it's a father more than a mother.
Yep.
So I think that's that big piece for it. So.
Although, to counter your sexist remarks there,
sure.
I definitely don't want to combat a mama bear.
No. I agree.
I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
I think you and I both experienced that with our own wives. You don't mess with mama bear.
Yeah, it happened at a basketball game one time. It was awesome. Side I've never seen of my wife. It was great.
I've seen it a few times.
Oh, yeah. It was awesome. Yeah, it was getting off on a tangent. We were at a basketball game. This was a couple years ago with our son, and so they had two teams, right? So, and they didn't have enough for the second team. So kids from the first team could play on the second team, right?
Yep.
So, but the rule is if you're the lead scorer of the first team, you can't play on the second team,
which makes sense. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely, yeah.
So our son did well, but he wasn't the lead scorer, right? So he was on that second team, and so we're watching the game because his friends then were watching him play. And this mom ahead of us, like a couple rows in front of us, said something about him being, well, he shouldn't be able to play. He was the leading scorer, blah, 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 blah. And then my wife, when she goes down, she goes like, and she goes, that's my son. And he wasn't the leading scorer. Oh, that's the first and probably only time I've seen her
now,
get after a parent.
Granted, your wife is non-confrontational. I mean, she is one of the sweetest
100%.
people we know. And but like I said, you don't mess with a mama bear. So moving on to that, maybe they should guard. Like
there you go.
Jeez Louise.
So we've talked about some facts, right?
Yeah.
What are the facts? So 40%. Are there any other facts?
Well, so 40 schools. It says KCCI emailed and called 106 school districts across central Iowa. Of the 90 districts that responded, this is kind of the statistics they had. So it was 40 said no. They were not allowing staff to carry firearms. Now, so here's the deal. Like, you're a staff member.
Yep.
And you and I have been to the gun range multiple times.
Yep.
We're comfortable with each other, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we trust each other.
We both own firearms.
When we travel, we know that, you don't sit there with one in your lap. But that's the thing. I think part of the problem or the knee-jerk reaction is this idea that you're going to have a 21-year-old female walking into a school with a gun, right?
Strapped to her hip.
Yeah, strapped to her, hip, or like femme fatale style, Yeah. And I think that's where the lack of education comes from too, right? Of just knowing what a plan should look like. And it's not everybody in your building that is,
that the ones that I've heard, there's usually a couple and you're not going to know who they are.
Yeah.
Are going to maybe have something. Now, there was one, where was it? Somewhere in the Midwest, but they had to where they allowed their teachers to carry it. It's not all of them, but it was some. You had to go through the training. But they didn't have them on their person. They had a locked box in the room, and the principal had a locked box in his office.
Yep.
And that's where it stayed at all times. So then you don't have to worry about somebody accidentally forgetting it on the toilet, right? Or somebody grabbing it.
And I don't know if it was issued by the school or state or how that works either. Maybe that's something we could look into.
But I think that's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
I know when what was the one down in Florida? The school shooting.
Is that Uvalde? No,
that was in Louisiana or Mississippi. Not Sandy Hook. I can't remember. Anyway.
Yeah.
So after that happened, I know I was working in a middle school. One of our older teachers was like, she was talking about it.
Right.
Because the thing of guns in schools got brought up again, and it always does.
It always does.
And she's like, I don't think there should be, I can't imagine. I would never want to carry a gun, and she goes, well, what? She goes, what do you think? And I'm pro-gun, Second Amendment, right?
Yeah.
Have guns. Safety, obviously.
Yeah.
Take care of all that, and my thought was, what? If they trained me, and if there was not a bonus, but they're going to pay you more for
the stipend,
just for the safety part of it or whatever. And they asked me, and I go, yeah, I would do it. I would be okay doing it.
Right.
Now there are some teachers, obviously, that would not be fit or that you would never want to see have one. But, I mean, when I think about, if there was a school shooting, I would rather be armed than not armed.
Right.
That's for sure.
Well, and you'd be comfortable being the shepherd at that point, right? Like,
yes.
But
we say that now, but who knows what would happen. But I think with the training,
the training stuff.
and like we've both used them before and things like that.
And the thing is you and I didn't necessarily grow up around guns either. But we've come to respect how to use them, and we've come to learn how to use them, right? We've taken the courses seriously. So it's just an interesting conversation. The other thing is, it says here on KCCI's article, it said 41 said had not discussed meaning. So almost half of the districts surveyed and responded said they will not do it at all. And 41 said they hadn't discussed it. Now that's interesting.
They haven't?
No, it says they had not discussed, meaning they have not officially discussed allowing staff to carry firearms. So that hasn't been brought up. So I wonder if there is a climate and culture in their buildings where it is not a fear, right?
Maybe you're just, not doing it out of ignorance. I don't know how you don't, or maybe it's a discussion maybe the higher ups, like have had the conversation, but as a district you haven't.
Yeah, it says officially. So I would imagine officially means like a school board or something.
Correct,
probably.
yeah.
It says four said discussing and are currently discussing its potential policy. Gosh, that policy writing would be interesting.
Yeah, you would have to have lawyers all over that.
Oh, just everywhere, man. Okay. Well, and speaking of, what was the handgun? There was a handgun that just they got a massive lawsuit against them.
Really?
Because there's a known issue that it fires. So you talk about lawyers without pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
So you talk about lawyers having to be involved, man.
I wonder which one that.
I mean, can you imagine the process of going through and having your lawyers approve what a school district?
It was a handgun?
Yeah, it was a handgun. I can't remember. I just saw it yesterday. 3 said undecided. While you're looking that up, I'll put.
Yeah.
3 said undecided and have not decided on new policy. So that's interesting because I wonder, of the 40 that said they had discussed it and not allowing it, I wonder if 3 of those were undecided. Like, you know what I mean?
Could have been, because I think you really making that decision. You really have to be sure.
I think so. And then 2 said no comment, which would be interesting in itself, right? Like, it
was a Sig Sauer P320.
Yes, the 6. That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like their second lawsuit.
Yeah. This was May. Well, this one was May 22nd, 2023.
Yep.
So they're probably just talking about it.
There's another one.
Dozens of cops claim Sig Sauer handguns fire on their own without even being.
Yep. So
that's not bad.
It had below are the districts KCCI reached out to list in alphabetical order, and it listed all 90, of course. And then it gave their response. It's a pretty good article. I think it's worth noting if you are, I think the big thing is it's good there's discussion, right, on that. Correct.
Yeah, I think you have to. And
I think you have to. And
what would you do?
As far as
like if it was, let's say at our district they said, okay, we're gonna allow teachers to be armed if they choose to. What would you think? What would you?
I would say. So here's the deal. Like from a professional standpoint, as a teacher,
yeah,
I think it's important. You look statistically, you look at the states who have open gun policies, right?
Yep.
They have some of the lowest shooting crime rates in the nation.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a fear factor. I don't know if that's and then you look at some states who do have open carry, no real laws, or large amounts of residents who have guns, and they do have some issues with gun crimes. So I think statistically, I think it does show that the majority of the time, the more liberal the gun control is, the less crime really there is with gun shootings.
So, you say the word liberal, you mean more like the more lax?
Yes, the more lax. Yeah. I'm using liberal in the term of more.
Yeah, make sure you get that
less.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the stricter,
less restrictions.
Yes. And the stricter the gun laws, usually the higher the crime.
Oh, absolutely. And we can all look at states or whatever, and we can all bend statistics however we want. But I think data is data, and so
I think they say that one of the things too. And I'm gonna step on you here.
Yeah, you're fine.
They say that if you don't know who's armed, you assume everybody's armed.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
and even as somebody who travels to different states. If I know the state is more laxed on gun control, like I feel safer.
Yeah.
I do.
Yep.
But there's also part of that fear factor too, right? Like, I see somebody and I'm just like, okay, maybe they're armed, right? But back to your original question, I would say I would be pro. I would actually volunteer for that.
Okay.
Because I feel comfortable.
Yep.
I carry most of the time that I can. Obviously not to school.
Obviously.
But, now there are some school districts, and I can say this with confidence. There are districts who have talked about not arming specific teachers.
Yeah.
But they've actually talked about allowing specific teachers to have it in their vehicle.
Okay.
And so I don't know if that is a step forward or step back. However, I do know that, again, it is important to have that discussion, right? Because your school district, just like your local government, is a microcosm of your community.
Yep.
And it should be representation of what your community wants. And so if your district is having those conversations at the school board level, then that should represent what your community is talking about.
Yeah. Now, can you do an open vote on it in your community?
I think you could, but I don't think you have to. Because the state law, the new law that just got passed says you don't have to vote on it.
That's true. I think that would be more of like a symbolic vote. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's where the survey comes into play, right? You know.
Now, like, I guess I get.
How about you? Well, what would your thought?
Yeah. Like you, I would. If somebody asked me, I would, if they needed somebody, I would be, I would. It's like if you're going to give us the training and things like that.
Yeah.
I would be willing to.
Yeah.
Like I said, I would rather, if the incident occurred. Now, I like the idea of having it in a lockbox.
Yeah.
Instead of on my person.
Oh, absolutely.
During the day, obviously, just but no, I like I said, I'm comfortable enough, and it doesn't hurt to ever have more training with it, right?
Right.
But yeah, I would be open to it.
That's the big thing, though, is training, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Well,
I think just in anything.
Yeah, on that part, I think even before that, I think the biggest misconceptions need to be fixed for a lot of people, because you would have a lot of teachers that would be upset even if they don't volunteer for it,
right?
But knowing that somebody's allowed to, just because, and I think a lot of them, and I'm making up a statistic, 99% that would be against it,
right,
have either like a fear of guns or a lack of knowledge of guns.
I would say it's a high percentage, right?
Yeah, obviously 99. I'm being hyperbolic, but
that 1% that you're quote unquote excluding in that 99% might have some sort of trauma or history with guns. And so I understand why you said 99%. Part of that, I think, the misconception has to be addressed, though, in it, if districts go to it, is this idea that we're not like the Wild Wild West, man. Like, we're not like telling a kid, I'll meet you in the hallway at high noon, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's not the first step either. You watch really good officers, they never draw their gun, but they have ability to make that rapport right away and talk people off a ledge, man. Like, you know?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. You had mentioned like having it in the cars. I'm not sure. If you were just because you have one, like you and I both, we both have our concealed carry, right?
Correct.
Now, obviously, we don't have them in our vehicles because our vehicles go on to school grounds,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
But I could see, allowing it on school grounds just because you carry every day other than that.
Yeah.
So it just makes it easier. But in the case of an incident, I don't think it's going to do a ton of good.
No, I don't think
because by the time you'd be able to get out to your car and back in, there's probably law enforcement there. And maybe it's for rural communities. I don't know.
Yep.
But then all of a sudden you're with a weapon and, I don't think it's going to do as much good.
No, an alternative to all of this gun stuff is I have seen some proposals where school districts put a door in every classroom.
Yeah.
Or if you're in an interior room, then you'd be directly across from a room that had a door.
You mean a door to the
exterior door, right? So the moment that alarm goes off, everyone just knows you go straight across the hallway 20 yards and you're in the exterior. I don't think that's a bad idea either.
No, I don't think so either. I think that's a good idea because, like the new training now is that if you can flee. Yeah. Right. So
run, fight, hide.
Yep. So, run, hide, fight.
Yeah, I think
run, hide.
Yeah, sorry, I did that the wrong order. Sorry, my SRO, if I said that wrong.
Jeez, take away your fancy, flashy,
my bright neon vest.
I don't think that's a bad idea either. Is to have an exterior door for every classroom. That's on the, and then like you said, classes across the hall would have one right across the hall. So that's not a bad idea. I don't mind that either.
No, especially with all these architectural redesigns of school districts, and you have all this natural light, all these windows, fishbowl style.
Yeah. What kills me though now, and we've seen this in our building too, is we talk about hiding if you can,
right?
But since they've redone some of our areas in our building, some of the classrooms have like huge glass windows, so where you can't. Where are you going to hide?
I saw a TikTok video the other day. This new teacher was showing it. So she had those 6 foot long pane windows as a wall, then the door, which had windows on each side, and then another 6 foot long to 10 foot long pane window as a wall. And so they were doing their Alice training. So she was standing behind the door, and it had that little lock latch thingy in it. And it was a glass door. So she pushed the button and it grayed out the door. But then everything else was like clear as day. And so her students were visible sitting on the interior wall.
I've seen that too. And it's something like, I don't know if it's her, if it was a different one, where I don't know if they put a blind down on her door because it was a skinny window. She's like, oh, good, we're safe. And then it pans over and there's these huge windows. And like, I mean, I don't know. I get having the light in there, but it's like, too, but... are we putting money towards security of our buildings? Or, are we putting a bunch of windows in? Because it's not, they're too contrasting.
Now, have you seen, and we probably can't show it, and we probably don't have enough time to go into this, but have you seen the security designs for elementary buildings? For elementary rooms? So there's companies out there now that they look like a tent, but they're a steel metal proof like tent.
And they fold it around, right?
And they go into like a corner of the classroom, and the kids can go in there, and it's like fully enclosed, but it's bulletproof.
I have seen that, yes, now that you mentioned it,
And then they make that, I actually want to get a sample of this stuff, but they make a film that you put on the inside of glass now, and it makes it bulletproof. And it's, I don't know what it looks like or it seems like, but I guess it's not bad priced.
Like a Kevlar
it's expensive.
Almost,
it's like a Kevlar film. Yeah, it's a Kevlar film. But you can put it on and it will stop. It will stop anything under 50 cal, obviously. But it's one of those deals where they were saying it takes a couple shots for a high powered rifle to get through. But but some of these things, these innovations that are coming up, are pretty interesting. But I mean, the sad part is they're a necessity now in schools, and I think we acknowledge that too.
And I think they try to, and I don't want to say they're band-aids on the issue, but we could always talk and get into.
Yeah, that's another rabbit hole too.
Yeah, it is. The mental health part of it, but no, I have seen that one. The one I've seen, she like pulls it out of the corner. And then it becomes a big room, and everybody goes in and they close it. That's that's not a bad idea too.
If you're, and I guess there's like these whole systems that districts can purchase, and of course they're expensive.
Obviously,
but it's just back to our original discussion of safety protocols. I think that's a huge piece of it. Whether you are anti-gun or not, it's just ensuring you understand what the protocol is for every situation, whether that's a hurricane, tornado, whatever it may be,
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard to get kids to follow along with that stuff too. And even, some adults, but because you do it so often sometimes. And it's train. But until you really need it, you're hoping that they're taking it serious enough for paying attention to know, okay, this is not a drill.
So let's, we've been going here for quite a while, but let's maybe wrap up. So the last piece that I had brought up that maybe we talk about is just from a teacher standpoint, what are some things we need to ensure we do or know, even if we're not a school district that allows, teachers to carry, or have an SRO, but what are some things that as a new teacher or as a current teacher, we need to make sure that keeps us safe?
Well, obviously it does when they do have those drills, as much as, you don't want to listen sometimes. You really make sure you're paying attention to specific things of, where's the escape? Where do we go? What's the kind, those. And, we've done it so long, it's the same, for the most part, the same stuff for, but making sure you're paying attention to that. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to, when you're going through one of those drills or even just talking about it at a PD or a staff meeting, if you have a question, ask the question, because you don't want to be wondering and all of a sudden you're in the situation and you never ask the question, so you don't know.
And and probably be open to giving feedback too, right? Like, don't be afraid to give it. Like when your SRO or principal goes, "Hey, we just did the drill. What are some things?" Like, don't just sit there. If you have something, like, just bring it up, man. Like,
you got to be able to talk, especially